Since 1921, some 400 Yaqui Indians, immigrants from Mexico, have lived in the settlement of Pascua Village at the edge of Tucson, Arizona. There they built a church, which is the center of their religious life. Around the plaza and church are grouped the Yaqui houses. In 1922, the city built a one-room adobe schoolhouse, which the children of the village attend. Beginning in the 1880s, the parents and grandparents of these children came as political refugees from many places in Sonora, Mexico. This woman, famous as a singer, lived through the wars with the Mexicans in the Yaqui country before coming to Arizona. Her husband is well known as a violinist for the Matachin dancers. Religious leaders are the head maestro of the church in the center. On his right, the leader of the Matachin dancers. On his left, the deer dancer. Two important musicians are a famous harp player and a drummer for the Pascola dancers. The Easter ceremony begins on Ash Wednesday. On the successive Fridays of Lent, the Chapayecas, the masked members of the Pharisee Society, come from a mysterious world outside the village. They wander, with no clear knowledge of where they are, into the village. They are met by others like themselves who have already been persuaded by the officers of the Pharisees to stay during the 40 days of Lent. The old Chapayecas, using gesture language, since they are not allowed to speak when wearing their masks, persuade the newcomers to stay. They signal each other by tapping their wooden daggers against their wooden swords. This is their pantomime of welcome. The shaking of the belt rattles may mean also either greeting or farewell. As they march into the plaza, they are taught some of the march steps of the Pharisees, for they are soldiers, infantry under the command of unmasked officers who are sometimes called the soldiers of Rome. As they line up at headquarters, they listen to the captain, their chief officer, in a speech which tells what they will do during the coming weeks. They will be helped by Saurinos, who can foresee the future. They will stay in the village with plenty of food and plenty of drink and carry out the crucifixion of Jesus. On each Friday of Lent, the people and the officials of the church walk in afternoon processions around the way of the cross. each station marked by a simple cross of wood. Chapayecas accompany the procession looking for the footprints of Jesus in their efforts to track him down and capture him. A man of the village carries a great wooden cross around the way. As the church group goes from station to station, little boys run ahead to place the flower carpet in front of each to receive an image of Jesus. The maestro reads the prayers of the Stations of the Cross. The Chapayecas, surrounded by the officers of the Pharisee Society, annoy the people. They rattle their swords and daggers. They gesture to one another. They look impertinently at the maestro as he reads the prayers. They interfere and make fun of all the devotions. But they also shiver and quake whenever the Blessed Virgin or any sacred name is mentioned. The procession completes the way of the cross and returns to the plaza, flanked on either side by the two lines of Chapayecas and their officers. On Palm Sunday morning, the entry of Jesus into Jerusalem is enacted. The Matachin dancers, wearing bright-colored headdresses, which are called flowers, celebrate the entry. The Pascola dancers, or old men of the fiesta, have danced all night, together with the deer dancer. The church is curtained, representing the gates of Jerusalem. One of the maestros of the church makes the sign of the cross in front of the gates, and Pontius Pilate, with his lance, stands to one side. On Thursday morning of Holy Week, the Chapayecas prepare the Garden of Gethsemane, using cottonwood boughs. As part of their penance, they do all the hard work of the ceremony, cutting the boughs and digging the holes to make the garden. Also, on Maundy Thursday, they enact a curious ritual, which they call the Pursuit of the Old Man. One of their number, wearing a mask with a white beard, sits in front of the cross before the church. A wreath of cottonwood leaves is placed on his head to symbolize the crown of thorns, because he now represents Jesus. Then the pursuit around the way of the cross begins. He and his fellow Chapayecas kneel and prostrate themselves on the ground at each station. The old man rests, as it is said, on each, and then lightly whips each one by way of blessing as they proceed. The old man wears a rope around his waist. This is used later in the night at the time of the betrayal, when the Pharisees captured Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Another chapayeka holds an end of the rope as they jog past the three crosses representing Calvary. They pass the Garden of Gethsemane. They enact the ritual of the three falls, and fellow chapayekas carry the old man into the plaza. The pursuit is over. All Thursday night, the soldiers stand guard over the captured Christ. Friday morning dawns, and they make preparations for the crucifixion. A procession forms. One group, which carries a figure of Jesus, is supervised by the members of the Pharisee Society. It goes around the way, preceded by a man carrying the cross of the way. Meanwhile, another group, consisting mainly of women, carrying images of the three Marys, moves the other way around the stations. At Calvary, they receive the gray way cross, which is used in the symbolic representation of the crucifixion. A chapayeka, under the direction of Pontius Pilate, with his lance and black cape, hammers wooden nails into the cross. This is the crucifixion. The flowers which blessed the cross when it was placed on the ground fall as it is raised again. The procession returns solemnly to the church. The cross of the crucifixion is placed inside, where a figure of Jesus is tied to it. The chapayekas then go jubilantly around the way of the cross, pull up and throw down the crosses at the stations, doing so with their left hands and in a backward manner, indicating the basic evil of their nature. In the meantime, one of the families of the village has prepared with care and devotion a bier to receive the body of the crucified Christ. Flowers decorate the bier. The women also prepare beribboned crowns for the young girls who carry out the sacred flag rituals. The bier, with its symbolic flower decorations, is carried from the private home to the plaza. The image representing the crucified Christ is placed beside it. Throughout the afternoon, the people of the village come in mourning to venerate. The chapayekas, however, in a mood of joyous triumph, prepare for a fiesta celebrating the crucifixion. They make fun of everything in masterly pantomime. They burlesque an Indian in feathered headdress. They burlesque white men in the sacred game of golf. They pretend to drink, although no real drinking is allowed at the fiesta, which lasts all Friday night. At intervals they rest, their masks placed on the ends of their wooden swords at one of the crosses in the plaza. During Friday night, the body of Jesus is taken by the church officials. The Chapayecas and their officers realize they have lost their quarry. They prepare for a battle, but first, on Saturday morning, they do honor to their leader, Judas. They take him on the way of the cross, going the wrong way around. They ride Judas on a donkey, incensing him with old burning rags, pretending to read books of their own prayers. And finally, into the plaza, which has been decorated for the important events of Holy Saturday morning. They're excited, nervous, preparing for battle. They place their leader at the far end of the plaza from the church as the battle begins. The maestro, the leader of the church, reads the prophecies, while Christ's army defends the church. The pascolas and deer dancers throw flowers. Whenever a flower hits one of the attackers, it weakens him. The Matachinis dance with their bright streamers, which also represent flowers, and play their part in weakening the attackers. The evil army rush at the church 3 times as the church bell rings. In a final attack, the Chapayecas' evil power is lost, symbolized by removal of their masks, which are thrown at the foot of the cross. They and their officers are rushed into the church by their godparents to take their place again in the world of men. The evil they represent as persecutors of Christ is destroyed through the ritual efforts of the Matachin dancers, the Pascola and deer dancers, and most important, the little boy and girl angels. The effigy of Judas is burned, and with it, the symbolic masks. Dances of triumph and joy then proceed. The Pascolas dance to European music with their masks pulled aside. And to the native music with the masks over their faces. The deer dancer dances to the ancient flower songs and the music of rasps and gourd drum. More than any other, he represents the ancient power of flowers transformed into the symbol of grace. 3 solemn days and nights of ceremonial labor, the people eat together. The women prepare tortillas and wakavaki, the Yaqui fiesta food. They roast coffee beans. All eat and drink to celebrate the fulfillment of their religious vows. The fiesta goes on. The Matachinis perform their most colorful dances on Holy Saturday afternoon and on through the night. The Malinchis, boys wearing women's clothing, are major figures in the Matachin dance group. They use a ribboned maypole of the same sort used by carry dancers and other country dancers of peasant Europe. The Jesuit missionaries in the 1600s brought the music and the dance to the Yaquis in remote New Spain. The maypole replaced the scalp pole in the victory dance which the Yaquis practiced before the Jesuits taught them Christian ways. Thus the customs of the old and the new world fused. On through the night, the Matachinis dance. As morning comes on Easter Sunday, barefooted girls dressed in their best bring the news that Christ is risen. The head maestro gives a sermon as all those who work together for the 40 days gather in a circle. The Pharisees go around touching the hands of everyone who participated, thanking them for their important ceremonial service. As the thank you circle breaks up late Sunday afternoon, the people of the village return to their routine ways. And the village settles down for another year with the words of the sermon lingering in their minds.
Santo discípulo, santo ángel de la guarda, amas, Diosica, amén, Catán. A bendiciarla, dime, Dios sabe, sabe, amable. Y ahora, apocate, campeón.